Hello there, and welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis that will help you discover, clarify, and live your purpose.
Welcome back, everybody, to What's the Point? And this week's guest is another inspirational story. Imagine, if you will, before you could even be aware of life, being given a death sentence as a child. And then when you surpass the 2-year mark that you were given, you're then told you won't walk, you won't have a normal life, you won't be married, you won't have a career, you won't have children. And imagine that the response is, watch me. And that's what my guest today has done. Sarah Manuel, welcome to What's the Point?
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. So Sarah is a speaker and a coach. She's a school psychologist. She is a survivor. She is someone that understands her purpose and lives it. And we're going to find out a whole lot of things about how she's done that and lessons that we can take from her life to help our life. So tell me at what point in your life, Sarah, you started to become aware of all of the limitations that other people were putting on you?
I have this one distinctive memory in junior high. I grew up in a very small town. So there were 35 people in my graduating class. That's kind of small. So I remember going into 7th grade, we were starting to take science classes, and they were dividing them by the more advanced and then the easier version. Well, the principal told my mom I would be in the class, the life science class, and we didn't realize, we just assumed that was a more advanced class because I had always done very well in school. And so I went to that class that day, and then pretty soon someone comes to get me like, you're in the wrong class, go to the other one. And it was that she had assumed I was in the lower class rather than the more advanced class. And that's kind of when I realized, like, oh, so, and it may not have had anything to do with my disability, but that's kind of where my mind went, that, she is also assuming that in addition to my physical disability, I have a cognitive disability, and that's not cool. So I'm going to go and prove to people how smart I am.
Well, good for you. So you were diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy.
Correct.
Which is the #1 genetic killer of children in the U.S.?
Yes, and it's one of the 40 muscular dystrophy diseases.
Okay. So you have spent most of or all of your life in a wheelchair?
Yeah, I got my first pushchair when I was 4. Up until that point, my parents just used a little umbrella stroller for me. Okay. So I've never been able to walk. Okay.
And isn't it, I guess I should ask you this rather than make a statement. How does it feel when people judge you based on your physical difference?
It pretty much isn't. It sucks. I don't know any other word to say it. And after that experience with that principal, it's like I made a point to go above and beyond to my teachers. When I got to college, I would go visit my professors during office hours or first week, so they would know that I wasn't, given my place at my seat in the class, that I had earned it, and that I was capable of the academic rigor that they were going to apply and probably would exceed their expectations. So I don't like that people judge me, but it kind of started a fire under me to say, you just wait.
Well, you've done an amazing job of responding to that and taking that as you said, an igniter. It ignited you. So you went to, we got you to university pretty quick here. Where did you go to your university?
I went to California State University, Chico.
Okay.
Which is close to, it was like an hour away from where I grew up. So it was close enough to parents, ideally far enough away from them too, but that didn't really work out. But still, it was a good school. It was good.
Well, a lot of people used to say when I was coming up that they wanted to be far enough away from their parents, but close enough they could get their dirty laundry home to mom. Well, congratulations. Yeah, and the University of California system is probably one of, if not the best public university system in the country of the US. It's an amazing system of schools.
Right, but mine was California. There's two university systems in California, the UC system and the CSU system. So mine was a CSU.
Which doesn't detract from it. It's just because that also is, I mean, the schools in California in general are great. So what was your major?
So I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. So I double majored in interior design and journalism, which have nothing to do with each other.
Well, and what did those lead to?
They led to a semester and a half of law school. And then I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer because I wanted to have a life instead. And then I kind of had some jobs and took a couple of MBA classes and got some, another job. And then I got to a point where I was working as a customer service representative for a health insurance company. And I was having to type 40 plus hours a week. And my arms with my disease couldn't keep up with that. So my arms just kind of felt like dead weight for a while because they were so overworked. And the doctors told me, well, you're not going back there, so you need to figure out what you're going to do. And that's kind of when I shifted to school psychology.
Well, that's very interesting because you're not trained, I don't believe, as a psychologist, are you? I mean, formally trained.
I am a school psychologist, which is different than like a clinical psychologist.
Okay.
So I work in the schools and I help qualified students. I help identify students with disabilities, most typically learning disabilities. And so I work with them, throughout their school period that they qualify.
Okay. And so are you assigned to a single school or is it a school district? How broad is your reach?
So I work for a county office of education, again, in the very rural area. So I am, for this upcoming school year, I'm assigned to, I think, 4 or 5 schools over like 30 miles apart between them. So I have like 150 kids on my caseload. It's a full-time job.
Oh, it sounds like it. And yeah. You are located in Northern California, yes?
Yes.
I know you said rural, but what's a city that some of us that aren't familiar with rural Northern California might recognize?
So we are between Sacramento and Redding on I-5. Okay. So there are rice fields and almond orchards as our neighbors.
Okay, so maybe the largest area for almond production in the world, or one of them.
At one point, it was the #1 rice growing capital of the world. But that's slowly been transitioning over to almonds, but they still do a lot of rice out here.
Well, that's interesting. Being from Louisiana, I would think that some of the people I know would dispute that, but I'm not going to dispute you because it frankly doesn't matter to me. Yeah. But it's a very rural area. How do the children react when they get to meet you?
Well, a lot of them know me because it's such a small area and I grew up here. So I grew up in the house my dad grew up in, and I'm working in some of the schools that I grew up in. So a lot of them know me, but even then, especially with the older kids, when I'm challenging them to kind of work beyond their obstacles and figure out how to maneuver challenges, I seem to have like an instant credibility with them that's kind of unsaid, because they can see that I'm asking them to do the same thing I've done for myself. because I've obviously overcome challenges and obstacles that are not typical, and they can see that, and I think they can appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because they have the opportunity to witness just by a quick look and then understanding your story that obstacles can easily, not easily, but obstacles can be overcome if they choose to and do the work. Did you have a role model like that when you were young, or did you kind of have to be a pioneer on your own?
I think a little bit of both. So I can remember my parents telling me, can't means you don't want to. And it wasn't that they were shaming me for the physical things that I couldn't do. They were challenging me to use my problem solving skills and my creative thinking skills to figure out how I was going to do the things I wanted to do. Because if I didn't figure it out, it wasn't going to happen, because things aren't just given to you in life. You have to go out and you have to work for them. So they were challenging me to figure out a way to make these dreams come true.
And that was an amazing lesson that your parents gave you, an amazing challenge.
Yeah. And I really, and it wasn't until recently that I realized, oh, they were teaching me mindset. And I don't even know if they realized that they were teaching me mindset, but like it all boils down to how you perceive the world and how you recognize your place in it and what you can do, even with whatever challenges or differences you have. Because I believe everybody has challenges and differences. Mine just happens to be very obvious and very visible.
Right.
I think everybody has that thing or things that they have to deal with and overcome.
Yeah, and most of us, and I say us because I agree with you, every one of us has a challenge or more that we have to deal with. Most of us aren't as visible in those challenges as you are. And what that doesn't do, Sarah, I don't think that takes away from some of the other challenges that you have, that we all have, emotional challenges and that kind of thing. You talk a lot about what is a sweet spot for me in this podcast about purpose.
Yes.
What is your purpose? How do you see that purpose?
Well, I think my purpose has evolved over the years. But right now, I really feel like my purpose is helping other people identify their purpose. And I feel like the way that they can do it, because the experts tell you, do what makes you happy. And I think I followed that advice with my undergrads, like, oh, I like decorating my apartment, so I'm going to go into interior design. But I think what we're really looking for is joy and fulfillment. And just doing what makes you happy, I think you're missing the mark, because happiness is temporary, but joy is more of a permanent state of mind. So I really feel that because let me back up a little bit. I remember having a conversation with a friend who told me in so many words that I wasn't a mistake. My disability wasn't a mistake. That's how I was intended to be here on this earth. And I think I probably heard that message before, but it resonated with me at that moment. And it's like, okay, yeah, I believe that. So if there's a reason why I'm here, there's got to be, a further purpose into me having my disability, my difference. And when I was able to unlock that, I was able to unlock my purpose. And I think that typically we kind of run or downplay or deny our differences because we want to fit in with our friend group or with society or with who we think we're supposed to be. But if we can really uncover that difference that we have, I think that's where we'll find our purpose. So that's my purpose, is to help other people find their purposes through looking in those scary places that they've been trying to pretend aren't there. And I've been there. Like I know what it's like to pretend that your difference isn't there. I was definitely in denial about my physical disability, even though it's like very, I would like call to make reservations at a restaurant. My parents would say, so is it wheelchair accessible? And I'm like, I don't know. And I'd have to call back because it was just, I didn't want it to be my reality. So I was really good at denying it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you just said a few things. You've said a lot of things that really struck me. So I'm going to try to address them a little bit because I think that you can expand on them terrifically. One of the things you said is that your purpose has evolved. Mm-hmm. And I, for one, am an absolute firm believer in that. The listeners to this podcast know that I believe that. Because our purpose does evolve, it can grow and it can change as we grow and learn and gain new experiences. So I appreciate your awareness and reinforcing that. But the one thing you just said is part of your purpose is helping other people discover their purpose. But then you said something that I don't want to get lost on our listeners. Mm-hmm. You help people look at those scary places that they don't want to look.
Yes.
That's a pretty powerful statement. Tell me more about the whole concept of looking in those scary areas. I think it's brilliant.
Well, I think in those scary areas, they're scary to us because they remind us of why we're different, of why we would stand out. And I think most people think that that's a negative thing. But I've come to realize that differences aren't bad, they're just different. And so an example that I love to use with this is because we talked about my school psychologist. So I work a lot with kids who have difficulty reading. And that seems like it's the worst thing in the world to teachers, to parents, to the kids themselves, because there's so much struggle because our school system is set up on learning to read and then reading to learn. But when you look at who our NASA scientists are, like 50% of them are dyslexic. When you look at the enrollment at MIT, like 80% of them are dyslexic. So just because they weren't able to read, their brain is still uniquely and powerfully wired to do other things that we just don't tap into until a later date. So just because you're different in what you think is a negative thing doesn't mean that you don't have something extraordinarily special to share with the world.
That is amazing. If there's one thing I would want myself and listeners to take is that statement right there, because you have, so you do coaching, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute, but you also have several courses that you teach, and one of them that is in development. So I'm going to start kind of at the end and then move back to the ones that you've already established, if you'll go with me on that. Yeah. You have a course in development called Don't Dismiss Your Ability.
Yes. So that comes with, first of all, I really don't like the word disability, because to me, you're talking about the things I can't do before you're talking about all the things and recognizing the things that I can do. And I can do far more than the things I can't do. So I use the word disability just because it's recognized and it's, understood by people. But I really don't like that word.
Well, let me interject here just something very quickly, because I appreciate what you're saying. I've got a brother who has been living with MS for over 2 decades now. I've got a granddaughter who has, thank goodness, a very slight affliction with cerebral palsy, and the word disability doesn't resonate with either of them. So I'm recording this from my second home, which is Dubai. And they use a phrase here that I think is just fabulous. They don't talk about handicap. They don't talk about disability. They talk about people of determination.
Oh, I love that.
And I love that too. People of determination. They've got walkways across the sand on the beach going all the way to the water, built for people of determination. It's just a fantastic way to position it.
Yeah, I love that, because in order to do anything with your life, when you have this difference or any sort of physical difference, it does take a lot of determination, and throw in a good bit of stubbornness, and you got me.
So back to the course that you are creating, and also the courses that you already have. I'll just let you speak to the courses that you have, because you have, if I'm not mistaken, a free course that's on your website, sarahmanuel.com, and that'll be in the show notes. But you have a couple of courses, Destination Tomorrow, I'm Not a Doormat. You've got the one that you're working on now, Don't Dismiss Your Ability. Give us some of the insights and some of the benefits that people get from those courses.
Well, I touched on a little bit, I realized how much of my life success, well, it's pretty I live a pretty typical life compared to most people, but for somebody with a physical disability, it's very atypical, and it shouldn't be. And I've realized that it was really due to mindset. And if we can just shift our perspective some, I think it really opens the door to acknowledging all the things that we can do and the gifts that we have. And just because, you may have a challenge doesn't, exclude you from living the life of your dreams. So an example I love to give with this is, because I wasn't supposed to live past 4 or 5, I celebrate every birthday. And now I'm not, it's not common for someone in their 40s to say how old they are. But I am very happy to say I'm 44, almost 45, because these are years I wasn't supposed to have. Mm-hmm. So for me, again, it's just that shift in perspective. Instead of being ashamed of my age because I'm getting older, I celebrate my age because I'm getting older.
It's getting older is, for most of us, much better than the alternative. So yeah. I think it's fabulous that you celebrate. Now, speaking of things that you were told you won't be able to do, one of which was to get married. Now, those watching this on YouTube will see that in the background behind you is like an homage to the Baltimore Orioles. Let's see, there's a space shuttle, there's some cars and trucks. That kind of looks more like a more typical guy wall. So is there a guy that hangs out there maybe?
Yeah, there's a guy that I like a lot.
So you showed him when they said you'll never get married. You're married for quite some time.
Next week, it'll be 20 years.
Congratulations. That's fabulous.
Yeah. So we actually met in a chat room in 1999, back before it was common to meet on the internet. And my parents were freaking out, but it worked out pretty well.
Well, good. Again, a pioneer in a whole nother area. Well, congratulations to both of you coming up on 20 years. Congratulations in advance. I think it's just terrific that you two have found each other. And so they also said that you would never have children. And I believe that you might have told them, watch this as well. And you're now a mother.
Yeah. So it was actually my husband who, when we first met, he's like, you could have kids. I'm like, yeah, I probably can't. You could have kids. And so it just opened up a door of possibility, and we started talking to doctors, and we were married 9 years before we decided to go ahead and try, just because our lives weren't exactly settled then yet. And it was just a lot of back and forth between doctors. Should we or shouldn't we? And we just finally decided that the benefits would far outweigh the risks. We knew what the risks were. We went into it with open eyes, and we just felt that our lives would be more complete, and we didn't want to think, well, what if we would have? So the first month that we tried, we got pregnant, and it was like an easy pregnancy. I didn't have morning sickness. It was amazing. And they were really concerned about my lungs. And so they watched me very closely. I had to do lots of pulmonary function tests. And believe it or not, my lungs got stronger the further along I got.
Amazing.
And it was truly a miracle. And I had this feeling of peace when I found out I was pregnant. I just knew that the baby and I would be fine. Like I wasn't worried. I didn't think, oh, I made a huge mistake. Like I just knew that we were going to be fine. And yeah, it was incredible. So, and usually like my veins are really hard to get blood or IVs or anything. And just because I don't have the muscle tone to bring them to the surface, and they're small and they're scarred from so many years of medical procedures. They didn't have problems once getting my blood or putting an IV in. We were hoping to go to 32 weeks because by that time his lungs would be developed enough to make it on his own.
Yeah.
I worked to 35 weeks. I carried him to 38 weeks, and he's 10 years old now. So it was amazing, and it was the most incredible thing to be pregnant, because it was like the only time when I could completely take care of him on my own. Like after I had him, like I needed lots of help from my husband and that kind of thing. But for those 9 months, he was all mine, and it was fantastic.
That just, it truly touches my heart, Sarah. The whole story, your husband giving you that open door of, no, you can have children, and then giving you the support of, I'm here with you, and for you to take up that charge and have that determination. I loved what you said about, for the whole time you were carrying your son, you had complete responsibility and ability and the gift to care for him. I can't imagine what that must be like, but to be a mother and to have that feeling. And again, those on YouTube can see the sparkle in this woman's eyes when she thinks about it and talks about it. It's incredible.
Yeah, we ended up naming him Nathan because it means gift from God. And the whole pregnancy and his birth and everything about it was truly a gift and a miracle. And there's no other way to describe it, because it shouldn't have been that easy, or it shouldn't have been, it shouldn't have turned out as well as it did, but it did.
Well, again, congratulations. And I'm sure some people are having the question, without getting into a ton of detail, your son's healthy and fine, and so I'm assuming spinal muscular atrophy is not genetic.
Oh, it is, but it takes both parents to pass it on.
Okay.
He's definitely a carrier because he got it from me, but my husband didn't have it. And we actually did a test right before the second trimester, where they took a piece of the placenta to examine to make sure he didn't have it, which was such peace of mind, because as he was growing and developing, he also has my stubborn streak. And he decided he wasn't going to start crawling until he was, realized that it was faster than scooting around. And he decided he wasn't going to start walking until he realized that it was faster than crawling. So he was like on the later end of the norm. And I would have been a nervous wreck thinking, oh my gosh, he has it. And all the things that come with that. So it was such peace of mind knowing, yeah, he's just a little stubborn.
Well, that's funny. So speaking of children, you're also an author. Differences are dynamite.
Yes. So it's a children's book. And there are like 6 little animal friends, and they all have differences. Some are physical, some are not. And they want to start a club called the Differences Are Dynamite Club. And in order to join the club, you have to look for the differences in each other and celebrate them. So instead of being ashamed or embarrassed of those differences, you learn how to celebrate and embrace them and just make them part of who you are without any apologies.
What a great lesson. And so you wrote the book and the illustrations, did you engage someone, or are you also a talented artist on top of everything else?
Oh, no, I got that professionally illustrated.
Okay. I was going to say, your disability may be rather obvious, but your abilities are many and varied and some unexpected. So I felt it smart to ask because it wouldn't have surprised me, in particular with your interior design training, who knows? So you are doing coaching on top of everything else now. Do you have a particular demographic or profile, gender? Who's your ideal coaching client?
Well, I was originally, and I still do target women kind of, age, where they've tried to play by society's rules and what they're told they're supposed to do, like, go to college, check, get married, check, have kids, check. But then, they kind of realize something's missing. And I think it's that they did what they were told to do instead of really discovering their purpose. And so I help them go through the principles of first accepting who they are and identifying those differences, and then to celebrate and embrace them, and to use that as fuel to help get from there to to the embracing of your differences to, okay, so now how do I implement it in my day-to-day life, and how do I go and find that purpose and live that purpose? Because I don't think it always means that it has to be a career change. I just think that maybe they need to volunteer somewhere or just shift their perspective of things in order to feel that fulfillment and that joy.
Yeah, and it ties back, I think, Sarah, to what you talked about earlier of helping guide people through those scary spaces, because it's, I certainly can't speak from a female's perspective, but just society does have certain criteria or that are expectations based on any number of things. So to look at something in a different light, to say, what can I do over and above that, can be kind of scary.
Right. And especially once you have your life established, like you feel like you have to burn it all down in order to go on this purpose fulfillment track. And I don't think you do. And I think that just knowing that you don't have to completely undo everything that you've done, I think that in itself gives you permission to pursue it.
Yeah, and again, we have so much that we agree on philosophically and in our belief in finding purpose, discovering purpose, and the fact that we don't have to tear everything down and start over. That oftentimes, my background is very strong on the basis of branding, and people always talk about rebranding. And I don't feel that it's necessarily rebranding. It's a brand evolution. Things can evolve and change. And that's what I see successful coaches doing with people, is helping them to see how they can improve and increase the pleasure and their gifts that they have, and to realize what their gifts are. Do you find, Sarah, that your adult coaching clients gain some of the same almost instant credibility that you said your students do when they get to know you?
Yeah, I think they do, because even though, most of them aren't going to have a physical disability, they can identify with the journey that I've taken personally, and through discovering purpose and through trying a lot of different things that didn't work, to finally finding the thing that did work. I think, if you take the wheelchair out of my story, there's still a lot that a lot of people can resonate with. And I used to be really afraid to share my story, because I didn't want people to see my wheelchair and think, oh, well, that's not for me. Mm-hmm. But I think, especially with podcasts, that because it's auditory, unless you're watching it on YouTube, you don't see the person you're talking to, you just hear the words. And I think that my story and my words resonate beyond disability.
Which I think is terrific, because it's probably common for a lot of people to shy away from disability just because it's the unknown and it's different. And so I don't know how to act or react in the face of someone else's disability. Yeah. Excuse me, but I also believe that once we are able to get through the scary part of accepting that someone else is different than we are, rather than disabled, perhaps a person of persistence, then people can start to gain inspiration from that and start to see, well, if they came through that, then I can come through this. And I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, and that really is my hope, that people will hear my story and use it to inspire and to motivate them. And that's part of my purpose also.
Well, I would be very surprised if people aren't inspired by your story. I would believe that a lot of the listeners are going to take note and perhaps question some of the self-limitations that they've put on themselves, that I've put on myself, and just ask the question, why not? Kind of like what you said, in the face of all the naysayers telling you what you wouldn't be able to do, when in essence you said, I'm not taking no for an answer, watch. Right. And I think those are incredible lessons and examples that you've shared. I also really feel, getting to know you, Sarah, that there are a lot of people out there that are going to get to know you, accept you for exactly who you are, and go to you because of who you are, and because you're one of those people of determination, and get the lessons from you that you're so capable and willing to give. So from having, before you were even aware, being given, in essence, a death sentence, to overcoming, you did get married, you have had a child, you do have not just one, but a multitude of careers, an author, a coach, a psychologist in school. If you put that all together, and you know this question's coming, and my listeners do too, Sarah, what's the point?
The point is that your circumstances don't have to dictate your reality. They can shape them, and they can put up guardrails. And I heard recently how I follow some people on Instagram that are in wheelchairs, and they're like, well, my disability does define me. And I had to think about that. It's like, no, it doesn't do that for me. It may put up guardrails on the roads I choose to take, but I get to choose to take the road. And I think that message can resonate to whatever your obstacle is. It may put up guardrails onto what road you can take so you don't veer off the road. But you get to choose the road that you take, and you get to decide what you're going to do on that road and on that journey.
I love that. I love the concept of guardrails, and it may seem a little bit, I don't know, inappropriate for me to say this, but what you've just said about a wheelchair not defining you or limiting you, I can accept that, not because I've ever been in a wheelchair, but I have limitations as well. I wanted to be a professional football player, and I was too slow for my size, and I was too small for the position I played. I just didn't have the ability to do that. And there are any number of things that all of us want to do, and we can't. So is that a disability, or is that just something that is kind of a guiding, a guardrail, something that helps pushing us, nudging us towards a path that makes sense for us?
Yes.
I love that, guardrails. That's nice. So I'm going to put in the show notes, as I always do, how to get in touch with you, sarahmanuel.com.
Yes.
And I will put in your Facebook and all of your social media information. When people go to your site, they'll be able to get more information on the courses that you teach, on the coaching that you give. And I trust and hope that many people do get in touch with you, because I just know in my heart of hearts that you're going to touch a lot of lives and help a lot of people move forward in ways they may not have thought they could, but they'll learn from you that they can.
Well, thank you so much. And that is my hope and prayer, that I can use where I've learned to teach other people and that they can fulfill their purpose and walk in that joy and fulfillment that they are meant to have.
Well, Sarah Manuel, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for showing us that determination and, as you call it, hard-headedness can get us places where other people say we can't possibly go. I appreciate your time and I appreciate you. And again, congratulations early on your 20-year anniversary coming up and on your birthday, young lady.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise you'll gain value in every one. Rating and reviewing makes us more discoverable and helps others find out what's the point. And if you'd like to know more about Bill Ellis or contact him, please visit his website, www.brandingpillars.com. See you next time.